Hi, everyone, and welcome. I am so glad that you have joined us for this very special virtual book event. My name is Kelly Ansara, and I am the Marketing and Publicity Director at Jonathan Ball Publishers. I have also had the great joy of working with incredible authors and helping to bring their stories to readers across the country and beyond. And this conversation is just one of those. It's definitely going to be something special. I can already feel it. We're joined by two powerhouse voices in fiction whose books have truly captured imaginations around the world. I'm going to start by introducing our brilliant discussant, Shubnum Khan, who is a South African author and artist whose work beautifully blends the magical with the deeply human. Her latest novel, The Gin Waits 100 Years, is a hauntingly lyrical coming of age tale set in an Indian South African community. The book has literally been everywhere, from the New York Times to NPR's Best Books of 2024, and was longlisted for the Dublin Literary Award. It's rich, layered, and totally unforgettable. And now for our featured author today, which is Alka Joshi. Alka is the internationally best-selling author of the Jaipur trilogy, which began with The Henna Artist, a novel that started as a tribute to her mother and evolved into a celebration of India, identity, and womanhood. Her books have been translated into 29 languages, and the trilogy has been optioned for a TV series. Her newest novel, which is the novel we're discussing this evening, is 6 Days in Bombay, and this whisks us away to 1930s India and beyond. It follows Sona, a young Anglo Indian nurse whose friendship with a mysterious artist sets off a twisty, globe-trotting mystery. And this story has it all. It's a tour de force. It has travel, art, intrigue, and a moving exploration of identity and belonging. So please settle in, grab your tea, coffee, wine, or water, and get ready for what is no doubt going to be an inspiring conversation between these two literary greats. So please join me in welcoming Shubnum Khan and Alka Joshi.
Thank you. Wow, what a great introduction. I love it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for that introduction, Kelly. Yeah, and so I think, Alka, I'm just going to start off with asking you some questions because I want to know so much. I just finished the book this morning and I loved it so much. And I just thought it was so great. And there's so much stuff I want to know, which I'm sure there are many people who are watching this who want to know as well. So, welcome to the exciting launch of 6 Days in Bombay in South
Thank
Africa,
you.
the digital
Thank
launch.
you.
Yeah.
How wonderful. I wish I could be with you all in person. And someday I think I will be there in person. But right now I'm in Los Angeles in my father's house.
I have no doubt that you will be with us because you are that person who makes your dreams come true. And I'm also sitting in my father's house, by the way,
Okay.
in Durban, where it is now evening, actually. Um, so yeah, welcome to everyone who's here to this digital book launch in South Africa for 6 days in Bombay. Um, I thought, Alka, would be nice if you begin by just giving us a brief introduction into the book so that we have an idea of what we're talking about for those who haven't read it.
Sure. When I was researching the henna artist, I ran across the name of a painter, somebody who was very famous in the 20s and 30s, but I had never heard of her. And I have a degree in art history, so how could I never have heard of this particular painter? And her name was Amrita Sher Gill. So in 2019, when I was going back to India before the henna artist was coming out into the world, I just wanted to talk to women in India all over about their lives and what they were up to and what their views were on marriages and so on. And I thought I'm going to make a stop in Delhi at the Modern Art Gallery there, where Amrita Sher Gill's paintings all hang. And I was so impressed by the quality of her paintings because in reading about her, I had learned that she was only 28 when she died. So all of these paintings had to have been done in her 20s. I thought, what a sophisticated painter she was. And then I thought, I have to know more about her. I bought a bunch of books about her. I started doing research, and I thought this was going to be my next book, 6 Days in Bombay. But what I wanted to do was to let the world know about this phenomenal painter whom I do not want them to forget. Her death was very mysterious at the age of 28. She was young, vibrant, healthy. She was promiscuous. She was outspoken. She had all of the hallmarks of an artist with temperament and vivacity. All the things that you are attracted to in a famous personality. And she showed up at a hospital in Lahore, which used to, of course, be part of India and then became part of Pakistan after 1947 during the partition. But at the time, she had a studio there. She was painting a lot. Now, people think that perhaps when she showed up at the hospital and slipped into a coma 2 days later and died, that maybe there was a miscarriage involved. Maybe there was some shenanigans by her husband who wanted to kill her. This is what her mother always thought. How exactly did this young woman die? So I thought, why don't I start the story there? Let's see if I can, in fiction, try to solve this death and then also at the same time be able to tell people about what an extraordinary painter and personality she was so that she can be remembered. So we can remember these women who continually keep being forgotten in all kinds of industries. It's so important for us to remember the women as vividly, as soundly, and with as much respect as male artists and men who contribute to various professions are remembered. I just want women to have that same opportunity.
I love that. I love that. That makes so much of sense. And what a fascinating story that you found to like pull out and make this into a story that could be explored where people know more about her as an artist. And I really love that. And I guess also I'm curious to know, is that also part of the reason why you're drawn to women's stories? Because I mean, this is a consistent thing throughout all your books, you know. There's always women who are featured, who drive the story, who have these untold stories. Is this part of the reason, and is there more reasons why you're drawn to telling women's stories?
I think one of the reasons I'm drawn to it is I really thought that when I graduated from college in 1980, that the world was our oyster. And I really thought that we women had made it. I thought I'm going to enter the corporate world. They're all ready for me. I'm going to show them my medal. I'm going to be, really extraordinary. And then I found that the patriarchy was still in existence. I found that the old boys network was still in existence. And I thought, oh, I've been sold a bad bill of goods. This isn't really, the freedom that I thought we women had achieved by this time. And I have found consistently throughout my 40s, 50s, and 60s that there is still very much of a patriarchal hold on our society. And so I want to, in whatever way I can, be able to tout the extraordinary accomplishments of women because I think that the more we know about the women who came before us and did these phenomenal things, that maybe we can keep their names alive, and maybe we can keep the idea of women being equivalent to men in their talents. We can keep that notion alive as well.
Absolutely. It just inspires people to know that there were so many women doing so many things before, you know. They were not doing stuff. They were there. Their stories just were not told or preserved, you know.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that because every time I write a book, people will say to me, "Oh, but that kind of woman didn't really exist. Like you just made that up, right?" I said, "No, these women really did exist throughout history. Why do we think that they didn't? Why do we think that women who really bucked the system, who said, I don't care what other people are thinking or doing. I'm going to do what I'm really good at, and I'm going to become great at it. So why would we think that women didn't allow themselves that kind of freedom, didn't, take themselves out of the box that they had been given and said, no, I'm not going to sit in this box anymore. I'm going to do something extraordinary. So, yeah, I think people ask me that all the time. Oh, these women didn't really exist, did they? No, they did. And so, 6 Days in Bombay is my attempt to actually call out a real painter who did exist in the 30s and who did, paint extraordinarily. And why has she been forgotten? Let's think about that for a second and let's remember her.
Absolutely. I mean, I love that. Which brings me to my question. So, why do you think we're so fascinated by women who don't follow the rules and who take up space and who live um, big lives? Why are we so fascinated by these stories?
Because most of us just don't have the courage to do that. Most of us have been trained from the time of birth to live a smaller life. Most of us have been trained to be quieter than the boys in the room. We've been trained to be the mediators, the peacemakers, and so that just naturally makes us take a back seat. We are not the ones in the foreground at the fight. We are usually in the background pacifying everybody. And for a woman to say, nope, I don't want to sit in the back of the classroom anymore. I'm going to go to the front and I'm going to say, this is what I think. Wow, that just, like it makes us fear for them, but it also makes us excited that there is somebody who took the chance to be that forward and to be, that courageous and to put themselves out there. So yeah, I think that we're rooting for them. On the one hand, we are rooting for them and we're like, yeah, go, go, go. But on the other hand, we're all also like, oh, I'm so afraid for you. If you stick your neck out, you might be the nail that gets hammered down. And also, we don't want that to happen to them, right? So we have this little push-pull thing going on all the time. But don't we just love it when a woman exceeds all of our expectations and says, I refuse to be put in a box.
I
And
know, I know.
I don't know if you saw, but my dedication in the book is to women everywhere who refuse to be silenced. You are my tribe. And that's really what I think of women who have pushed themselves out of that box. I just think you guys are me. Like I wanted to be you. I am one of you now, and I want to grow this tribe of women. Absolutely.
Yes, I have so many things. I don't know what to say because all the words want to come out so quickly. I have so many things to say to that, but yes. Um, I so strongly feel that in your novel. And even one of my books is dedicated to all the girls who dream. Similarly, I have this similar thought process. And I also think Sona is that care is us when she's looking at Mira living her life, and she's that also that slightly like fascinated, the same thing that you're saying, she's fascinated, but she's a little like judgmental and a bit horrified, and but like she wants to embrace this life, and what does it mean to be this person? So I think you've encapsulated that feeling so well when one woman looks at another woman who's just doing what she wants to do in life, um, and realizing that maybe I could do that too. Maybe I could be that too. What is it? And what is it to live a life that I live a life of my own? Like, what does it look like? What does it, such an unimaginable thought to live
Yeah.
my own.
Yes. It's almost like we don't even allow ourselves to think that way, much less act that way.
Like it's blasphemy.
Yeah. And you and I as authors, we always have to make this decision when we start writing, whose perspective am I writing from? Am I writing from the perspective of the actual person doing all of the acts, or am I writing from the perspective of somebody who's looking at them? Are they in the middle of the action or are they outside of the action? And I made a very clear decision when I was writing 6 Days in Bombay to say, I want to look at Amrita or the patient in the hospital, this famous painter, in the same way that that the nurse is looking at her. So I wanted that exact same perspective that you have picked up on, where I am looking at this famous painter going, oh, wow, how extraordinary that she is living the life that nobody said she could live, but she's decided to break all the rules and to be this person. So the nurse is actually in many ways me looking at the famous painter, and so, in a way, I get to mirror how I perceived her from the very beginning. And then the more I found out about her, the more I delved into her real reasons for being the rebel, and maybe some of the hurt and the pain that goes behind that, that goes along with that. So, the more I find out about that, the more I sort of reframe my idea of who this woman was. Yeah.
I love writing so much because just you can just go and explore whatever you need to explore just from your own chair. It's amazing. So speaking of women who live big lives and who are doing things that just blow us away, can you tell us a little bit more? Because I think this is an unusual story, and I think more people need to hear it about how you got into writing. Because I know it was later in your life, and you were quite settled in your own different career at the time. And I think I love hearing the story also because people need to know that you can follow whatever you need to follow at whatever stage in your life. So if you could tell us a little bit more about how that happened.
Sure. And this wasn't even just about writing. I writing is my fourth career. I have always felt very free to change careers whenever I felt like, oh, I'm not really happy here. I don't like getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and going to this job. So let me see what else is out there that I might be interested in doing. So I've always done that. And by the year 2008, I had been running my own advertising and marketing agency. I had been working for other people for many years. And then I thought, hey, I am really good at pitching new clients and bringing them into the agency. Why don't I do that for myself? Why am I doing this for other people? So in 1995, I had set up my own agency. And within that first year, I made 4 times what I ever made working for other people. And that was part of my impetus is I thought, why would I accept a lower wage, a lower salary, when I know I'm perfectly capable of doing as much and earning more than my male counterparts are earning? And so I set up my own agency, I had my own clients, and so on. Now, in the year 2008, there was a huge global recession. And what that meant is that we had clients who were either losing their jobs or, the banks were failing, companies were going out of work, companies were actually just folding. And so I thought, okay, business is down. What am I going to do for 2 years while the economy is recovering? Now, my husband, whom I had been married to at that time for quite a while, had always said to me, I think that you could become a fiction author. You tell me great stories about India that I have not heard before. You should write those stories down. Now, I had not listened to him all those years, but finally I thought, well, I have 2 years and I know that there are these Masters of Fine Arts programs. So let me just go ahead and involve myself in one of those. I enrolled. It's a very intensive program where you're reading all the time, you're workshopping your work, and you're looking at other people's work and giving critiques. It was a great program, and we're reading a lot. And then through that program, I was also able to get these spring breaks and Christmas breaks and so on. And my mother said, let's go to India. My younger brother had a condo there at that time, and she goes, let's just go stay there. You can leave me there for a couple of months. I want to reconnect with friends and family, but I need a chaperone. She was in her 70s and she wanted a chaperone. I was in my 50s, so that's when I'm going back with her. I had not been back to India for 36 years. And at that point, I was able to see India in a whole new light. It was like rediscovering this place where I had been born. And my mother is taking me to sari bazaars, and she's taking me to jewelry bazaars, and she's taking me to the fruit and vegetable markets. And I'm like, wow, I come from an amazing heritage. Look at this rich country I am from. And the people are so warm. They will give you the shirt off their back, even when they don't have anything. And so I thought, I should start writing about India. And then my mother is sharing things about her life, about her young life, about when she got married, about how she wanted to be a psychologist, but that wasn't in the cards for her. She was supposed to get married. Within 4 years, she had 3 kids. She had delivered 2 sons, which was very important to her, in-laws. And so by that time, she was like, not able to ever go back, have a career, do any of those things. And so I thought, well, how extraordinary that she was raised in such a repressive or such a society that didn't let her make any choices about her destiny. But she has raised me to be this very independent woman. From the time I was little, my mom's like, you will do whatever you want to do. I am never going to get in your way. So you choose your partner, you choose your career, whatever it is you want to do, you get to do. And so I have lived an extraordinary life. And, as I said, changed careers whenever I wanted to, just done whatever I wanted to do. And so I thought, I want to write about my mother. I want to pay tribute to this woman. I want to create a character who gets to live the life that she would have loved, even though she starts out life with the arranged marriage and this idea that she needs to have children. But she keeps herself child free and she goes on to form this career. And Lakshmi was born from the henna artist. And then I thought, what would Lakshmi do for a living? Oh, I know. Every Indian woman knows Mehndi. She knows how to do henna on her hands and her feet. She has been to all the weddings and festivals where women have that done. And so I thought that's something that my character could do if she has any kind of artistic ability. And then I thought, oh, the other thing that Indian families all know how to do, like my family did, is we have these herbal remedies that get passed down from generation to generation. So she would know about all of these herbal remedies, and I think that she could help other women, with sort of natural health, remedies. So that's another thing that I thought Lakshmi could do. And so it just kind of grew from there. I start working on this novel. And at the end of 2 years, I have a novel, The Henna Artist. And I think I'm ready to be published, of course, but nobody wants my book, I'm sure, because even my instructor said, you have some work to do on this novel. And but the recession was over and my clients were calling me and I just went back to work. And within 8 months of graduating with my master's, my mother actually died. And I had no more impetus to keep going with my novel. And so I got a call one day from my mentor at the program, and she said, what are you doing with the novel? I said, this is what happened to my mom. I don't want to work on it anymore. And so she said, you know what? You really need to make sure that this novel gets out into the world. We think that you might have the best chance of all of these cohorts in your group. So then I start working on the novel again with her. A year and a half later, she sends it to her agent. Her agent calls me from New York. I love this novel. I want to work on it with you. And I think, once again, very naively, I'm so ready to be published. And she said, no, you're not ready to be published. We need to work on it. 3 years later, we're still working on this novel and I'm getting frustrated. And she said, listen, you've got to get yourself some independent editors to work on it because I don't know what more to tell you to do. So I start working with some independent editors. They give me lots more changes. And by now I'm really frustrated because it's been 7 years since I first started the novel. And I thought, no, nobody's ever going to publish this because everybody keeps telling me I'm not ready. So then I put the novel away. A year goes by, and then I run across the novel in my desk and I go, okay, you know what? I owe this to my mother. I started this as a tribute to my mother. I need to finish it. I need to get it out the door, or it's going to hound me for the rest of my life. So I went back to work on it. I sent it all back to the agent and I said, it's been 9 years now since I first started working on this novel. This is my 25th revision. Would you please send it out to publishers. So she did, and we got that contract with HarperCollins. So that is the whole trajectory. But as it went off to HarperCollins, for the next year, I was working on my editor at HarperCollins, with my editor at HarperCollins. So it's like it's never over. And I'm working with her on it. And then suddenly, the oh, she sends it off to the printer. And when she sends it off to the printer, Malik from the henna artist will not leave me. So he's like, you've got to write my novel. You've got to, you have 140 pages from that initial start of the henna artist where you cut me out of the novel. And so I really need to have you tell my story. I started to write his story. 20 pages in, my editor gives us a second book contract just right away, even before the henna artist is on the shelves. So now I have two books, and the first one's getting printed. The second one I am writing, and now guess what? My release date comes up for the henna artist, and the release date is March the 10th, 2020. And the global pandemic is announced on March the 11th, 2020. So I don't get to have any book launches. I don't get to have any book signings. I don't get to talk to anybody about this novel I just spent 10 and a half years working on. I mean, I really thought this is a cruel world. How did this happen? How in the world? And of course, I am ready to slit my husband's throat because he's the one who got me into this mess in the first place. But it was really everything paid off because I reached out on social media to book clubs, and at this point, I've done over 900 book clubs on Zoom around the world, and I think book clubs really saved me. So readers, I am loyal to you for the rest of my life.
No, thank you so much for explaining that. I think also you're so popular with the book clubs because you're so gracious, you give so much of information and you're so forthcoming with it. So I think that's also why book clubs just love you.
Well,
Um,
I think, I mean, don't you find that they just give you a lot of energy and they give you insights into your own work that you didn't have? Like, sometimes they'll tell me something about a character and I'll be like, wow, that is really insightful. I'd never thought about it that way. Like for 6 Days in Bombay, what they told me so far is that the real life painter, Amrita Sher Gill, empowered me to write a story. And then in the book, the fictional painter, Mira, empowers the nurse to write her own story. And I thought, oh, that is like a mind-blowing insight. That was amazing that they came up with that. And I thought that is absolutely true. That is exactly how it happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. Book clubs have given me insight into my own self, into my own writing, which has always made me so amazed. Really, a reader can sometimes see things that you didn't even know. So I absolutely agree with that. I'm always interested in knowing in terms of plotting things, like how writers work and put together. So I'm assuming you can correct me where I'm wrong, but so you had this idea of this painter and her life and that was the main inspiration. But then in terms of plotting it, like how did you think which cities you were going to put together and how the story was going to come together and yeah, just in terms of like those parts, how did all that come together and how long did it take for all that to come together?
Okay. So I had actually been in my mind working on this story and reading about Amrita since 2019. I had been amassing a lot of different information. Every now and then I would find something and I would, set it aside in a file that's just for 6 days in Bombay. And then what happened is I knew that I didn't want to write a biography. The real Amrita Shergill was half Hungarian and half Indian. And so I thought, okay, what can I change about her that makes it not exactly her? Well, one of the things I thought is instead of making her Hungarian, why don't I make her Czech? Because she's still from that part of Europe. where it's just different enough that it would be interesting. And then I thought, okay, if I make her from Czechoslovakia, how about if I also make her mother the Hindu instead of her father, and then make her father the Czech, the European, as opposed to her mother, in real life, who was the Hungarian. And so that those are just some changes that I made. So I thought, okay, in Czechoslovakia, I've been to Prague before. I find it a beautiful city and very mysterious because it's still so medieval. There's the old town and the new town, which are still hundreds and hundreds of years old. So I thought, okay, how about Prague? She'll be from Prague. So I knew I had to go to Prague. In real life, the painter had studied in Paris. At the age of 19, she had become the youngest member of the Grand Salon of Paris, which was an honor accorded only to the most talented artists and painters of the time. So I knew I had to go to Paris. And then in Florence, Amrita had studied at the Accademia delle Belle Arti. And so I thought I have to go to Florence. I want to go to exactly this academy that she went to be tutored in painting. So I knew those three places were going to have to happen. Now I had to figure out how she's going to get there. And so in 1937, which is when I decided to set the novel because I didn't want to compete with either World War I or World War II, I wanted the story to be compressed in the interwar period. I thought, okay, how were people traveling from India to Europe? Guess what? There were these steamships. And one of them was the RMS Viceroy. It was the most famous steamship. And then I find out that it went through from Bombay to the Suez Canal and then through the canal into Istanbul, stopped there, and then from there people would take the Orient Express.
And
Wow. Oh,
and just
wow.
to say, there's such a beautiful scene about that whole journey, how they go through and what they see. It's gorgeous. Sorry, continue.
Right. And I know, for example, that they have to, that they're disembarking at Cairo. Some passengers are. And so I thought, oh, I have to find out what Cairo looked like in 1937, and what would this trip have looked like in 1937? I found these diaries of people and what they saw along the way, the passengers of the steamship. And then in Istanbul, I find out that there's not just one Orient Express, but there are many Orient Expresses that went to different points. So then I have to find the one that went to Prague in 1937. I find that. And then, of course, I'm so enamored of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express. I love that whole idea of taking the train and having sleeping cars and having a porter who wakes you up and, takes you to the dining car. And all of it's just so glamorous. And I thought, okay, now I have to find out what that was like. So then I start reading all these accounts of people who were on Orient Expresses and what their lives were like. So that was really fun. And then I knew that the nurse, who's a protagonist in 6 Days in Bombay, she bonds with the painter. And I thought, how could they bond together? They're both in their 20s. Okay, so they're about the same age. The nurse has lived a very sheltered life, and she's very fascinated by the painter who has lived all over the world and done all these extraordinary things. And she's only in her 20s. And so I thought, okay, there's another way that they could bond, and that is, what if they both have half Indian identity and a half European identity? And then I come to find out that in hospitals at that time, private hospitals, which is what a famous painter would have gone to, the only people allowed to work in those hospitals were English doctors or Anglo-Indian nurses. And so Anglo-Indian nurses that are, absolutely makes our nurse half Indian and half European. So I thought, okay, this is another kind of thing they can bond over, is this dual identity that they have. So then I thought, okay, if the nurse has a British father who came to work in India and then left and deserted the family at some point, then maybe the nurse has to also go to London to find out what in the world happened to that father of hers. So now I had all of the settings, I had all the cities that I needed to go to in order to write the story.
I mean, amazing, amazing. Were any of those cities that you'd never been to? So you just went in there for research?
No, I think I've been to all of those cities before. Yeah,
Okay.
including Istanbul. Yeah.
Cairo?
Oh, Cairo. No, I've never been to Cairo. I've never
It's
been to
just a
Cairo.
small part, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
Amazing.
I'm still wanting to go on an Orient Express. I've never been on an Orient
I
Express.
want to go on the Orient Express also. Let's just go together.
Yes, let's go together.
I'm inviting myself on this trip.
Let's get yes, and let's get all dressed up the way that Sona and Mira have to get dressed. That Sona has to get dressed up for dinner. So when the porter comes, they have to take your reservations for dinner, and then you go to the dining car and you're in glamorous gowns. I mean, people had to get dressed up for dinner. Today we're so scruffy, we just go in our jeans and sweatshirts, but people used to get really dressed up. And I just thought, oh, I had so much fun designing the gown that Sona is wearing. I had so much fun. One of the things that I would do if I had to live life all over again is I would become a fashion designer. I love fashion.
Amazing.
I love jewelry. I love everything that has to do with fashion. So I would have become a fashion designer. So for me, through my books, I get to design the clothes that women are wearing.
I loved that outfit that you described. Like, and I love that we probably have different ideas in our head what that outfit looks like, but still it works, you know, it's amazing. So that's the beauty of reading and writing is it depends on your imagination. I
Yes.
love it.
And they put the green sari that her mother uses to make that gown for her. They put that on the front cover.
But
I
where's
love
her
that.
cleavage?
Oh,
Where's
yeah.
the-
Where's the cleavage?
Um,
Okay, so that comes from the fact that I don't know where my mother got her ideas. She had such forward thinking ideas for a woman who had been raised in India in the 40s and 50s. Okay. And so with me, as I was growing up in the United States, she would always encourage me to wear stuff that showed my cleavage. Now, I was flat as a pancake. I had no cleavage to speak of. And so I would be scandalized by my own mother. I would say, Mom, I can't be wearing stuff like that. And she'd be like, oh, this halter top would look so cute on you, hon. You should wear this halter top. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to be backless. Oh my God, there's going to be nothing on my back. I was the prude in my relationship with my mother, and my mother was always the forward thinking one, thinking, honey, you want boyfriends? Why don't we dress you up? Up in a way that men would, be flocking to you. And I would always be the one going, no, 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 Mom, I just want to hide. I want to hide. I want to hide.
I know
So yeah. So
I
this is
love this
what,
story.
yeah. So this is why Sona is always wanting to hide. And her mother is the one who's saying, we're going to have to do a gown that, shows off your figure.
I love when daughters are scandalized by their mothers. Um, the henna artist and even 6 Days in Bombay are set in particular time periods, the 1930s and the 1950s. And I'm curious to know why you're drawn to those periods. Um, like sometimes it just happens by chance. I know for me, like I had a flashback to the 1930s, and it was just because it worked out that it was a good period that didn't, you know, exactly what you say, interwar period. But I'm curious to know why particular because all your novels, particularly the time periods, seem to be a focus in your novels, and so why?
So the henna artist started in 1955 because I was writing this alternate life of my mother, and she was married in 1955. So I chose that. But then as I was doing research for it, I was watching these Bollywood movies from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And there was a movie called Mr. and Mrs. 55. And it was all about, and it starred Madhubala, whom I mention a lot in the book, very famous actress of the time, and also I think it was Dilip Kumar. And so the two of them, they are arranged in marriage, but they don't want to be married. And then we come to find out in the movie that in 1955, it's the first year that Hindus are allowed to divorce legally. Before then, it was not allowed for Hindus to divorce. And I knew that Lakshmi, my main character, needed to stop hiding the fact that she had deserted her husband. And in 1955, she could legally divorce him. So that's why I started the story in 1955. 13 years years after she leaves her husband, she meets up with him again and can finally get that divorce. And so that was a very specific reason why I started it there. And also because I wanted people to understand what life was like in India post-independence, that there was a lot of vibrancy, there was a lot of energy about rebuilding India's infrastructure. But in the West, many people don't understand what was happening in India. And somehow they seem to blame India for the poverty that ensued post-independence, and that it was all the fault of the Indians. Why can't they be more progressive? Why can't they be more, industrious? Why can't they, use their smarts to help their people? Well, it's very difficult after 300 years of being colonized by the other. It's very difficult to rebuild your infrastructure and your self-esteem as a nation to grow. So part of what I'm always trying to do as I go back in history is to say, this is what India was like before independence, during independence, just immediately after independence, because I want you all to understand that this is a very rich country that I come from. I want you to understand this is no fault of the Indians that they could not immediately pick themselves up after being colonized for centuries. That this nation deserves acknowledgement for not having succumbed to dictatorship as so many previously colonized nations did. This is a nation that picked themselves up, by their, fingernails, basically, and has now become the fifth largest economy of the world. India deserves your respect and your acknowledgement for that. And that is what I want to do with all of my novels, just to show people that, what was happening in India before all of this, craziness ensued. So for me, I have said this before. I think I said this at an event. I said, I am on a one-woman mission to be a positive PR for India, just so people understand the history and where we come from and what people were doing during all of these periods. My fifth book, which is almost finished now and ready to go back to the editors, is taking place in 1920s India. So it's almost like I keep going back in time. The first three novels were in 1955, then 1969, then 1974, and now 6 Days in Bombay is 1937, and the next one is 1920s. And with the sixth novel, I'll probably go forward with the new generation of kids that Lakshmi, Radha, Sheila, all these people have had. And so, then I'll be moving forward in time again. But I just want people to understand, as I'm sure you do, the history of the people that we are from. And I want people to acknowledge what a vibrant culture India is, and how the people are so clever and industrious and have worked very hard for where they are now. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. And the legacy of colonization as well. I think novels have a way of showing you the details of how life was made difficult and things you forget about. It's sometimes novels can really get into the small details of showing you the day-to-day life of how normal people were affected. Um, and I loved that because the characters were Anglo-Indian, you were kind of getting not both points of view, but you were seeing it from how it would have been a struggle for the character. Um, I have a question, and I wanted to ask you, what surprised you when writing this novel about anything, the characters or the time period, or something when you were writing this novel? What surprised you?
Okay, several things surprised me. One of the first was that I was wondering why the Amrita's family kept flitting from Europe to India during that interwar period. And then I came to find out that her mother was a Hungarian Jew. And then I did some more research. I was talking to my dad about it. And my dad said, "Oh, honey, there are many communities of Jewish people in India, and they had been coming for over 2,000 years to escape persecution." Well, I had no idea that there were Jewish communities in India. And so I started delving into that history and come to find out that, yes, India allowed Jews to come in. They had no issues with them. The Jewish community set up their own kosher butcher shops and bakeries, and they also were allowed to set up their synagogues and worship however they pleased. Um, India has always been a refuge for anyone wanting to escape persecution. And that made me really proud to be from a country like that. It made me really proud to know that these people were welcomed and they contributed back to the economy of India. So they became lawyers and doctors and accountants and helped a lot with economy. And then I came to find out that in 1920s Bollywood, most of our female actresses were Indian Jews. And because it was a time when Hindu and Muslim women were not allowed to be on the screen, they were not allowed to perform. And so we have Ruby Myers, who became Solochana. We have Esther Abrahams, who became Nirmala. And so there were all of these amazing
I
Jewish
didn't know
women
this.
yeah,
Wow.
they were our first Bollywood sensations, and people loved them, loved them. The Indians loved them so much. So that was really surprising. Um, and what else? Oh, okay, here's a kind of interesting tidbit that I loved learning about it when I was in Florence. In the Via Tornabuoni, which is a very elitist kind of shopping street in Florence, at the very end, right near the Arno River, is the Palazzo Ferragamo. And Ferragamo, the maker of shoes, he had come back from New York in order to start making shoes by hand again, which is how he had been taught. And he set up this atelier. He started to make his shoes again. Guess what? In 1930s, Mussolini said, "Hey guys, we want to make Italy great again. And so we are not going to allow you to make products that have any items in it that are not found in Italy. You must find everything that is made in this country." Ferragamo used to use steel for his stilettos. And steel was not manufactured in Italy, so he had to find an alternate material. And he experimented and found cork. So he made these cork wedge shoes. They became a sensation because, first of all, Ferragamo, major, designer, but also because they were more comfortable to wear than stilettos. And so women started buying them by the droves. And even the Maharani of Kuch Behar, who was the mother of the Maharani Gayatri Devi in Jaipur, ordered her own set of Ferragamo shoes. And on the heels themselves are embedded pearls, rubies, diamonds, emeralds, like every pair of shoes that you and I have in our closet, basically. They're beautiful. They're just beautiful. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. Um, so we have a question from Anusha Chetty, which is, Hi Alka, I've read your previous books as well as 6 Days in Bombay. While reading the new book, the chapters of Dr. Misra as well as Dev Singh were drawing me back to the Henna Artist trilogy. Was this a sneaky lead into another book or a secret acknowledgement of your trilogy?
Oh my God, it's a secret acknowledgement of my trilogy. And I have to tell you, it's so interesting that you picked up on that. I'm so glad that you did. Okay, so as I was writing 6 Days in Bombay, these three characters kept reappearing in every revision that I did. And I kept changing them. I changed, the characteristics of their face. I changed a bit of their background. they kept coming back. So yes, Dr. Mishra is actually Dr. Kumar. Dr. Mishra in the 6 Days in Bombay, he is like he's the young Dr. Kumar when he first comes from Oxford to practice medicine down in Bombay. Eventually, he'll go back to Shimla. So yes, what we are finding out is Lakshmi wasn't the first woman that he was involved with, and and then Dev Singh, absolutely, that's like Samir Singh, and then the wife, that he is being engaged to in 6 Days in Bombay is of course Parvati. But I called my agent and I go, help. Every time I do another revision, I'm trying to get rid of these characters and they keep coming back. She said, Alka, don't worry about it. It's okay. Just change their names. We'll be fine.
Some characters just they demand to stay on the page. They don't they want to get into the next book. They're like, I'm here to stay forever.
Yes. Yeah, so you found that too, right? Characters start they have agency in the book and they start saying, "Hey, I want to do this. I'm going to say that. You, Miss Writer, do not get to tell me what to do."
Absolutely. I always have one version of an auntie who comes in all the books. There's just one auntie who's just very particular, and she's just always in a different version in every every book, shouting everyone. Um, so I think I think we have a little time. I'm gonna quickly just ask you one question so that we don't have more Q&As from the audience. So I'm a South African Indian, and I'm always fascinated by identity and people grappling with their own identity. I had a grandfather who came to South Africa in 1935, and he would always support India when South Africa and India were always playing. And then apartheid happened, and then everyone stopped supporting South Africa and my family. But then after apartheid, everyone started supporting South Africa, and I grew up like thinking, oh, but what am I? Like, am I Indian? Am I South African? I'm so confused. And, as I got older, I realized, oh, I can be both. I can identify with a lot of things between the two. And the two cultures are very different, like apartheid and partition. And there's just, British colonization. And so I'm always interested, to cut the long story short, I'm always interested in identity and grappling with identity. And I know you grew up in India and well, you were born in India and you came to the US quite young at 9 years old. And so I want to know if that played a part when you were creating Sona, who is Anglo-Indian.
Absolutely, it played a part. I think that when I first came to the United States, very few people had ever traveled to India, much less traveled outside of their own home state. We landed in 1967 in the middle of America in the state of Iowa. And it was a small town where my father was getting his doctorate at Iowa State University. And so it was very annoying to constantly be asked questions like, oh, where did you get your tan? Like they didn't realize this is the color of my skin. They thought that I had sat out in the sun to get brown. And then they would ask questions like, oh, you're Indian? What tribe are you? Because they were only used to the native tribes, the indigenous tribes of America. And then they would ask me things like, oh, India, is that anywhere close to Texas? So, and then of course, there were questions like, why are you allowing so many people in your country to go hungry? I'm only
Mm,
9 years old. I don't know how to answer these questions. And so, for a big part of my life, I was trying to defend India, but in a way that I didn't have the language or the history or the opportunity to do that. I didn't know. I was raised in middle class. And so I didn't even understand what people were talking about when they said poverty. Um, and so I think that over time, what happened is I just didn't want to be Indian. I didn't want to be answering anybody's questions about India. I didn't want to be acknowledged that I'm from a country that they don't even think is worth going to or worth any respect or any acknowledgement. And so as a kid, I just said, okay, I'm not Indian. I am going to just pretend to be American, and I'm only going to eat American food because otherwise people in school say I smell like curry and they don't want to sit next to me. I am going to just speak in English. I am going to only dress like an American. And so, Mom, I have to have jeans. Mom, I'm no longer wearing these salwar kameez. I'm going to wear jeans only.
Yeah.
And so I became very American, to the point where I never wanted to go back to India, and I didn't for so many decades. And I think that going back with my mother, I thought, oh, she's totally comfortable being Indian and being in America. Like she's totally comfortable with it in the way that Amrita Sher Gill was very comfortable being both European and Indian. She loved wearing her saris as well as the latest Paris fashions, and she was just as comfortable in like doing her hair up like a Parisian woman as opposed to putting it in a bun like an Indian woman. And so I thought, how is it that some people are so comfortable with both identities when I feel like I had to choose between the two and I chose one? And so this is why Nurse Sona then is also very much looking at her patient Mira and thinking, why I am so uncomfortable being British and
Mm,
Indian at a time when, the Brits are being looked at very skeptically, like, why can't you just leave now? Okay, you've overstayed your welcome. Please go. So why is it that I cannot be as comfortable with both identities? And so I think this is why I send Sona on this journey. After Mira dies, she leaves 4 paintings in the care of Sona the nurse, and with a cryptic note that indicates that the nurse needs to deliver these paintings to the patient's former friends and lovers. And she had so many lovers throughout Europe, both men and women. And so the nurse now has to deliver these paintings throughout Europe, and she goes on a trip that she never would have taken otherwise. She takes chances that she never would have taken otherwise. And so I think in a way, what I'm trying to do with Sona is I'm giving her that power to be able to explore her two identities simultaneously, and to see that maybe she doesn't have to choose between the two, that maybe she can embrace both in the
mm.
way that I think I have now embraced both of my identities and not had to choose between the two.
Yeah. And I love that we're living in a time when we can celebrate our identities, especially like in a Western part of the world. Like I remember growing up, I'd be like embarrassed about like my henna would smell. My classmates would be like, "Oh, your henna smells," and I'd be like embarrassed to be wearing it. And it's so nice to be living in an age where actually you can celebrate who you are and even acknowledge, as you grow as a person, you realize, oh, I can be both, just as you're saying now. We're running out of time, so I'm going to just quickly read to you some comments, which is Vinola Govender says, "Thank you for your amazing stories. The henna artist will stay with me for a long time. Loved it." And this one you can just answer quickly because I think I know the answer to this one. Candice Goodman says, "Please excuse me if the news is already out, but is there a chance that your stories will reach us on film?"
Oh, yes, I'm absolutely hoping that my stories will reach you in film and in a TV series. Because I think that the information that we keep receiving from Hollywood is they've never heard of these stories before. There are a lot of immigration stories back and forth between India and another country. There are a lot of stories that are about partition or they are about independence, but no stories of people just living their lives in all these different time periods. And so, yes, those kind of projects are in the works. And of course, I am hoping that you are all going to either watch them on a streaming platform or go to the theater and see the movie.
Alka, it's very clear that you have such a strong fan base here in South Africa who are just eagerly awaiting all books that you write. It's been such a pleasure having you and talking to you here. Thank you so much for making the time in your very busy book tour schedule to speak to us and to tell us a little bit about your book, 6 Days in Bombay, that everyone can get at exclusive books in South Africa. It's available. And Alka, thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank
Do
you,
you have any
Shubnum.
last words?
Thank you. Thank you, Shubnam. Thank you to Exclusive Books. And also, thank you to all of you guys. If you have a book club and you want me to talk to you about 6 Days in Bombay or any of the other books, please get a hold of me. You can always find me through my website. I would love to talk to you guys.
Right. Thank you, everyone.